Hey everyone, welcome to the Reference Live call with Columbia Sportswear on SAP Communications Center by ANCILE. This call is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Ivanka Benoist from SAP. Please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Ivanka Benoist from SAP Partner Sales Programs Office. Today we will talk about our third-party solution, SAP Communications Center by ANCILE, and we have a great customer speaker from Columbia Sportswear, Myra Lavigny. Myra, welcome to this call. Thank you very much for taking the time to share your great story. We look forward to it. I would like to welcome also our presenter from ANCILE Solutions, Mel Pauline. Mel will give us a very short overview about the product we're talking about. Saying that, I would like to start, Mel, with you. Can you give us an overview about the solution and also about probably the relationship between ANCILE and SAP? That will be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Ivanka. Happy to. Welcome, everyone. As Ivanka said, my name is Mel Poulin. I'm with ANCILE, and the topic today is about SAP Communications Center by ANCILE, also known as ANCILE uAlign. So you'll hear the discussion about both today. Really, it's the same application. SAP resells it as SAP Communications Center. ANCILE and SAP have had a long-standing relationship for over 16 years, where SAP Education is taking advantage and reselling to their customers a couple of our software applications. As you see here on the screen, ANCILE uPerform and ANCILE uAlign, both known as SAP Productivity Pack and SAP Communications Center. So the entire value proposition that we'll be talking about today, and is really part of what Productivity Pack and Communications Center are all about, is adoption of change. So when we're really focusing on what is this all about, it's adopting change from a process, software, organization, or environment perspective. Today, the topic is specifically about SAP Communications Center or ANCILE uAlign. So when we focus on what that is, it really is, just like the name of the application from SAP points out, it's the center of communications. It helps manage communications to provide information just in time, just enough, just where needed, and just when needed in order for people to be able to do their work, especially with changes that are being pushed upon them. So the kinds of things we can do with ANCILE uAlign or SAP Communications Center are to push information that people need wherever they happen to be. In the case, as Myra is going to talk about today, directly to their retail stores. We can ensure that these employees receive the information and that they understand the information so that we can actually optimize productivity in those stores or wherever the worker happens to be. Ultimately, we're going to be reducing risk in the business to make sure everyone is able to do the work they need to do with the new changes. So we're really talking about enablement of our workforce. That's what it's really all about. We're empowering people to understand what they need to do and then how to do it, but just as importantly, we're going to be enabling business leaders so that they can make the right decisions with the information or the validation that Communications Center provides as this information is pushed out. So again, we're focusing on delivering the right information to the right people at the right time, wherever they are, and ensuring their comprehension. So how can we do it? As Myra will talk about, you can create messages for very distinct groups. You can send them and you can prioritize them by date when they're needed to be acted upon. You can track how people are doing. Did they receive it? Did they comprehend it? And then target your own actions based on what that data says, and then ultimately ensuring performance and productivity. So without further ado, that's the tee up for this. I'd like to pass it to Myra, and she can tell us her story. Myra?
Hi there. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me as I tell you a story inside Columbia Sportswear, how we used uAlign in 2015. I first saw this tool back a year ago at APUG 14, and I was very impressed with it, and I put it in my back pocket. And then when I became training lead for change management issues that hit our retail store, I pulled that out of my pocket and thought this is a great use case for when we need to communicate to this dispersed group of 100 store managers over a project that was quite crucial, which I'm going to tell you about. First off, who is Columbia Sportswear? In case you have not delved deeply into our company, I want to tell you that we are a global brand family. We are the leading designer and manufacturer and seller of high-performance outdoor and lifestyle apparel, footwear, and accessories. Our brands include Columbia, Sorel, Mountain Hardwear, Montrail, and Prana. We're sold in over 100 countries worldwide, and we were founded in 1938 by the parents of this lady right here, Gert Boyle. She is now our chairman, and her son, Tim Boyle, is our CEO. Our headquarters are in Portland, Oregon, and last year our net sales were $2.1 billion. As I said, we are going to be talking about our retail presence today in this project that I used uAlign for. So we have 100 stores in the U.S. and growing, and over 200 more located worldwide. So what was our project? The project was the rollout of a new biometric time clock and timekeeping software to our 2,000 retail staff and 100 retail store managers. So that's new. Biometrics, that was a hard change management thing to get over. Some people were very leery of giving a fingerprint to clock in. First challenge. New time tracking software. Teaching store managers and management teams a new way of working with daily time cards and exceptions and time off requests. That was new. A new process for requesting time off. So store managers and team who used to use paper now had to use the clocks and software for time off requests. New processes for store managers, such as approving time cards, were brand new workflow, and they had to learn to wait for staff to approve their time card first, so that was new. And then the new process for clocking in using biometrics, what to do with the clocks, to set up their accounts, and then how to learn their new way of clocking in and out. We had to get this right because it affected people's paychecks. There was no room for error on this project. Retail stores provide challenges for any kind of training that needs to get done. When you add into that the compliance and must get this right aspects of a new system that affects people's paychecks, you have a supreme training challenge. At Columbia, we have mostly outlet stores, and they're clustered in outlet malls across America. And outlet malls, they have varying internet speeds based on a variety of factors we don't have control over here at headquarters. Sometimes the speed can be all the way down to poor. Most of the time it's sufficient, depending on the time of the day and how many people in that mall are banging on that connection at that time. We have 15 training managers that help with training staff in new store openings, but we could not use them for this project. Site visits would be too costly and too time-consuming for them to be on the phone with all these managers, which is another way they usually train. Another challenge we had was store managers have little time to spare to sit on conference calls. The retail business is fast-paced and needs an engaged and available store manager at all times. At each store associates have varying shifts, and so they can't all be at one place for a single training session. Typically, they have lives. A lot of them go to school or other jobs. Training has to happen over days and has to be tracked to make sure you spoke to everyone if you're the trainer. Finally, our stores function on a lean store staff model that must serve customers and sell product first, and training comes second when there's time. So these are just 5 of my main challenges for this project. So at Columbia Sportswear, we are an SAP client, and because of that, we have some great tools for our employees. Success Factors is our learning management system, and uPerform is our training creation tool and training server. However, as you can see with this model, deploying uPerform courses to our staff, there's a gap here in the red box. Store managers read or don't read, that gap right there. being able to track whether a store manager is reading their email and communications. We have one that's a type of newsletter style document called the CRC, inside of which are instructions for taking their training. So we needed to know they had read that email or communication that had their training instructions. We can see, however, through success factors if they've taken their own trainings by running a manual report, and then we can go back and send reminder emails that they need to take their training, but then are they reading the emails we send? That's our current model. I wanted to twist this model around and make it more efficient by using uAlign. The flow here shows how one tool that brings the training and communication together can track the opening and consumption of messages for me. If I put training links directly into the communications, and then I quiz on the aspects of the communications and training, I know who's read or not read them, and who's completed or not completed their message. A completion is typically passing score. Reminders would be sent out automatically then via Outlook every day. They're automatically generated, these notifications from uAlign, and recipients would have to log in, read, and answer their questions successfully to complete their messages. So, as you can see up above, on the new model, work instructions, videos, anything I want related to training can be tracked via uAlign. So what do we need to deliver? My training materials were comprised of uPerform courses that were hosted at the uPerform server along with job aids created in Word and PowerPoint. I also created signs to hang on the old clock at cutover, and I sent out materials from Human Resources. I included messages from the Director of Retail Operations, and I held a couple of conference calls with training managers in one district. But I found as the project went on, these calls were redundant on the materials I was sending them, and they were not needed. The timing for these materials in the projects was tricky because it was a rolling go-live district by district across the country from May to June. I found the first thing I needed to do was the manual setup of my 100 store managers. I presented to the store managers at our January meeting last year and told them uAlign was coming. I told them how it would help us and how they would need to register, and they should keep their eyes open for the welcome message. The registration was fairly painless. I uploaded via batch a .csv upload, and I signed those names in that comma-separated value document. I assigned those names to different groups. The system auto-sent welcome messages. The screen you see here on the right is what opens when you get the click Get Started Now button from the email message. And that's all that's required here is to just put in a password. Email messages automatically become, the email address automatically become the username. So often I had people just leave the fields the way they were, which was that their username was their email. So the first thing I could do is notice who hadn't registered, and I could call them and say, please look for that welcome message. Next thing I did was I created channels for my messages. ANCILE was super supportive in helping me craft the best solution for this project, and after discussions on the differences between campaigns and channels, I chose channels. Channels are for long use. You can put in multiple messages in channels, each of which have their own due date, whereas campaigns are like a beginning and end to a series of messages. On screen here, you can see the 4 messages I created and how they did with the branded and Southeast stores. I had 95% completion rate, an average score of 77%. I'm sorry, I'm having some stomach pain, so I'm trying to talk through this on the call. From the drafts channel I made, I copied messages to other channels with different due dates and different recipients, and then I tracked the readiness of store managers to go live using the completion statistic and the average score. What that meant for me is I could then reach out just to store managers who were not completing their messages for whatever reason, help them ramp up themselves and their staff to be ready for go live. My trainee list for individual attention went from 100 down to like 10 or 15 people. uAlign gave me that visibility into who was engaged and not engaged in the messaging. If they weren't engaged with the messaging, then they weren't doing the trainings. Here's my first message. It's the rollout schedule. And the quiz questions here related directly to them having to look at a calendar and mark it with their own rollout. Message 2, this was the mother lode of messages that contained information for them as a manager, information for them as an instructor, and information for them as a teacher. The bottom of the messages, as you can see, I can put PDFs up there. I can put links right to their trainings. Here's a message purely around support, and I was able to put in a YouTube video that would make them feel happier. Don't worry, be happy. The messages here on the right, the questions rather, are more survey style. So I could rate how they were doing and see if we were on track. Message 4 is another survey I sent out when all the training was done. I'm going to show you examples later of what the results were. And I wanted to show you an example of a reminder message in Outlook and what that looks like if you're not reading your messages. You can see they have individual message subject lines and their due dates. I can tell you the results were as I thought they would be. uAlign made the difference in this project's success. 7 key ways that it made a difference. uAlign helped me make trainers out of my store managers. Store managers had 24/7 access to the training messages in the cloud. The auto reminder aspect of uAlign kept store managers connected. And I could combine my key messages for the rollout with my training links in one message. As far as reporting, this was a huge part of why we wanted to go with uAlign too, because my Senior Vice President of Retail loves reports, and he loves to see metrics. I was able to do a completion report to check on who was ready for their go live. I could then give individual help to those outliers. It was enough time to, compensate for any gaps that they had. And because of the rolling schedule, I was able to modify messages and make them better based on feedback that I was getting from the reporting. Here's one of my typical reports, a status report. I would check this a few times with each go live, and under the gray box is a list of emails, so I'm not showing you those, but you typically would see the emails on the left, when it was delivered, when it was completed, and what the response time was, and then also their scores. I've highlighted in red a particular store manager that I had to reach out to. They hadn't been engaging at all with uAlign or their message, so I knew that one manager needed to be called. And typically what I would do is just help them get online and start reading their messages, and they were good to go from then on. My quiz reports told me, how people are doing on the quizzes I wrote. Maybe there was a question that was a little tricky and I was getting too many fails, and I would tweak it for the next go live. Overall, the pilot was a huge success. We had smooth go-lives, and I met my training goals. I wanted to include 3 quotes here from store managers. The first one, the e-learning and printed guides were very useful. We felt like we were ready for the go-live date. The interactive part of the e-learning really helped the management team by enabling us to see the different sections in action. That e-learning was created with uPerform. That's what they're referencing. And all training materials were located right here in one location. I liked getting sent reminders when assignments were due. Training materials were easy to read and follow along with for easy understanding. And then at the bottom, I love uAlign. Easy to navigate. I like that I can go back and know where everything is and reread if needed. But for those of you that love data, here's the bar graph. This shows that 76% of the stores had their clocks installed quickly, and the staff knew what they were doing. And 15, well, since I have 100 stores, 15 of the stores had this installation was delayed. That means the tech on the day of the go-live was a little delayed getting the new clock installed. But the staff knew what to do, so they were trained and ready. And then I had one manager that had fallen through the cracks and was a little behind on the training because they had people who weren't in prior to go-live, but he still had to train. But his clocks were installed quickly, so that was good. Results of the training status and materials. Here I have the 3 to 90, how many completed their training and that of their staff. The other 2 extra folks on that are district managers who are also in uAlign. So my numbers are a little skewed. There was actually more like 91. How effective did you find the training materials to be in preparing for your go-live? I got 81% combined score there for effective or very effective. And then I asked the big question, which was to validate our purchase of uAlign for 2016, would we use uAlign going forward? The answer was resoundingly yes. And of that, I asked them how many people within the store should have access with their own accounts. And again, the resounding answer here, 83, said I would like store managers, operations managers, and assistant managers to all have their own account. So the full management team. But this quote probably says it best from one of my actual training managers. uAlign is fantastic, and I highly recommend that we continue using it going forward. That is a real testament, because this is a person who does training all the time with these stores and often remote training, and to know that there's a tool that he could use going forward to help push out training and messaging, to have his recommendations is huge.